Welcome to Amplifying Wellness with TLC, a place where we discuss your self-care and wellness through our guest stories, information, and tips on how to live healthier and happier lives. We are Twin Life Coaching and Business Services with your host, myself, Kara Lehman, and my business partner and, of course, sister, Barb Schutz. We care about increasing awareness around self-care and mental health through this podcast, coaching, and more. To find about all of our services and our community, please visit us at twinlifecoaching.ca. As a reminder, this podcast is for sharing of stories and information only and is not intended to be or replace any medical advice you are seeking or have received.
So today we're welcoming Jenn Fredericks, a coach and personal resilience practitioner whose passion is guiding patients and caregivers from fear, depletion, and uncertainty to live with more confidence, calm, and contentment. She does this by building their prosilience or proactive resilience. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Can you start by telling our audience a little bit about your background in terms of wellness and self-care, just so people get to know who you are?
Sure. Well, I think, like a lot of us, my quest for wellness and self-care came at a time when I was on my knees, when I maybe was already past the point of being able to, quote unquote, help myself. So it actually came at a time about a year after my daughter, who was 7 at the time, was diagnosed with a low-grade brain tumor. And I also was saddled with the information that I would be laid off at the same time. But so it was, I had been in marketing for about 16 years and always thought that was my path. So when this personal life disruption happened and I didn't feel I had the capability to support and guide her the way that she needed and deserved to be, I started to build a lot of internal anxiety and found myself on my knees, literally. I couldn't eat without getting sick. I was having the physical manifestation of anxiety. And this came as a shock to me because I had been managing my own chronic illness. I'm a 2-time kidney transplant recipient. I'd been managing that for 3 decades. So I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Well, life happens for us. And so at the time I was also laid off, I had this weird idea of trying coaching, not having a coaching session. I had never had one, but why don't I go ahead and train to be a life coach? I had an acquaintance who was one. And so that disruption, that hard reality of life is what let me know I can't do life this way anymore. Let me find a way to support myself. And so I started certification for life coaching about 3 months later. And I did it for my career. Little did I know I was doing it to save me. I don't know how I would have remained upright to this point, because my wellness journey is, as all of ours could be, my wellness journey is a long marathon. My daughter's is a lifelong marathon, and we need to find sustainable ways to support ourselves. So we're not just alive, but we're alive.
We're living.
Yeah.
Love that. So I want to dig into this topic of yours, prosilience, because I think, a lot of us have issues like even your story. I mean, both Barb and I, have immune deficiencies. Both our families, my daughter has Crohn's and Barb's husband too. So, there's so much that I think we need to learn how to be more resilient when you have things like that. You've got work happening too, right? It can be very stressful. So why don't you help our audience first by understanding what is prosilience? What do you mean by that?
Sure. So prosilience is proactive plus resilience equals prosilience. And it's the idea that we can prepare ourselves now to face those challenges that come our way so that we don't have to fall down and pick ourselves back up each and every time, because the energy that takes is so large. I think we've all experienced that. where
Mhm.
something's happened that's unexpected, or even we know that it could be coming, but it actually happens, and we just don't have anything in our gas tank to support us. And so the idea of prosilience, the framework of prosilience, was developed by a resilience researcher for about 30 years, who's also an industrial and organizational psychologist, named Linda Hoops. And I ran across this framework because people always asked me, how are you so resilient? I had my first kidney transplant at 15.
Wow.
We adopted our beautiful daughter. I had another kidney transplant. She was diagnosed with her illness. I was laid off, like all of these things. And I didn't know how I was so resilient, but I knew that I was. So I started really digging in to resilience. What is compassion fatigue? What is compassion resilience? And I ran across Prosilience. I read this book, and it was like she had been watching my life, because the strategies, the framework that she laid out, I could then recognize in myself. And now I have words and ways and practical tips and tricks and strategies to offer people to help them be resilient. And it means the world to me to be able to help people find a sustainable way to really be alive no matter what life brings them.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I think it's really awesome when we find that we're not the only one dealing with certain things, because sometimes we do feel, you get so stressed out because, your daughter is diagnosed with something and you just don't know how to handle it. And to know that there are support systems out there, such as yourself as a coach, or for me, there's a mom's Crohn's and colitis Facebook group I'm part of. Like, it's just so great to know that when you do that little bit of research, that there can be a lot of help and support out there. I love it.
So many resources, and actually I'm pleasantly surprised at how many supports I've been able to find when I really dig into it. And the one thing I do still see, I think, kind of a lack of, is that idea that patients with chronic illness don't really have tons of support when it comes to holistic wellness.
Agreed.
And, you see more and more out there for caregivers, which I am so happy to be able to support them. And that's really one of my focuses. But the other one is, like, as a patient, we have so much to juggle, especially when you get into the adult patient world. And where is that framework or support? We do have quite a bit offered to us, through health systems and mental wellness supports, but just not the same. I see a gap. I see a gap, and I hope to be one to help fill that gap.
I think that's great. Like, you really explained a lot of your reasons why you're doing this. So I think that's awesome. Is there anything about when you're coaching your clients and your patients, that you're finding the difference between kind of their whys, for who the caregiver is versus the person themselves, when you're coaching the difference?
Sure. Well, as a caregiver, especially if you're a caregiver for, I deal a lot with caregivers of young ones, rather than maybe aging parents, although a lot of us are finding ourselves in that sandwich generation where we need support on both ends of the life spectrum. So there I see a lot about just being so depleted. And not having the energy or being able to find the specific focus of how to best make decisions for their own well-being as well as their loved ones' well-being. And so I really work a lot with, there are 4 building blocks within the Prosilience framework. We can talk about all of them, but the one I'd like to talk about here is managing your personal energy. And so that's the one that really can support the rest of the building blocks of resilience, because our energy fuels our resilience. If we don't have full tanks for our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy, all of those forms of energy that are interconnected, we aren't able to fuel the other resilience strategies that we have, or those resilience characteristics that we all have that are innate within us. So I find that across the board, I would say, for patients and caregivers, that managing energy is an important piece of it. And then also, I mean, it's the not wanting to feel alone in this.
Mm-hmm.
And
For sure.
I would say that's more for caregivers. And then when I work with patients with difficult diagnoses, it's the fear of the unknown, or even if they've come to the conclusion of a treatment, it's that always being on your tiptoes, like walking on eggshells leading up to the next lab appointment or scan. So there I might do a lot of work with them on building block number 1, which is self-regulation techniques and calming yourself.
Mm-hmm. I could see it for sure why that is so important, is just keeping calm and if it's something you have to live with, like most of our audience knows, Barb and I live with psoriasis, and a lot of people think it's just a skin disease, but it's not. It affects a lot more than that. And so, it's something I've had since I was 9, and Barb was probably 12 or 13. It's something you have to live with. But at the beginning, it's scary. You don't know what it means. You don't know why your skin is broken out into these weird little rash type things.
Yeah.
But we learn to live with it. We learn to say it's not contagious. I don't even know how many kids Barb and I have had to, like, it's not contagious. I'm not contagious, because people were so fearful of it.
Sure.
Like, we started our own support group on Facebook because we know there's so many people out there who don't have the supports. I hope you don't mind. I want to come back to the whole patient versus caregiver part. Can you share what some of those differences might be, between a patient, if somebody has chronic illness who's listening, or if they're a caregiver of somebody, kind of how resilience, prosilience might be different?
Sure. Well, I mean, I kind of don't think there's that much of patient versus caregiver and what they need. It's all based in the same needs.
Okay.
What you focus on at each and every stage may be different, but I also believe that's true for caregivers and patients. So what I really love about the Prosilience framework is that there are these 4 building blocks of resilience that you can focus on, and you can choose which ones you want to really hone in on and use when you're facing a challenge that's coming up. I mean, truly across the board, managing energy is a certain problem for both patients and caregivers. I would say, so managing energy is talking about your physical energy and how you use your body to get things done. How much energy do you have there? Your mental energy is thinking clearly and quickly and being able to make decisions from your wise mind. Emotional would be working with those difficult feelings that come with the diagnosis and everything that you need to manage with it. And then the last is the spiritual energy, which is connecting with the sense of meaning and purpose, something larger than yourself, something that's going to help fuel you and to keep moving you along. So I would say that probably patients, and me as a patient, physical energy at times is my main focus.
Right.
How am I going to plug the leak of my physical energy and then refuel it? How am I going to put in some new habits and lifestyle choices that can help my physical energy? Sometimes that's all you have time for, is really focusing on your physical. Like, if right after a surgery or a procedure, let's say, physical is the most important energy to refuel, because we know that will aid in our healing. That doesn't detract from the other 3, because it's always a mental and emotional game as well when you're healing from something. So I would say patients usually spend a lot of time looking at their physical energy. I think for caregivers, a lot of it is that emotional piece. And also the spiritual piece. And sometimes as a caregiver, you lose yourself. And so you don't have that connection outside of, this is my child or this is my loved one that's fueling my energy to want to take care of them. But sometimes you lose yourself. And so when I can help caregivers reconnect to who they are in the larger scope of things, it can help then fuel the other energies as well, so that they can flex their resilience muscles or their resilience characteristics that we also all have within us.
And I like that you said it's like a reconnect with yourself, because sometimes we focus so much on them, we forget about us. And, and I'm a person who's done that. My daughter was diagnosed at 15, right? It's
Yeah.
a young age. It's scary. So yeah, it's like there was I had a coach. I've always had a coach. And so that to me was like, how do I reconnect?
Yeah.
Because it was too focused and then I'm not taking care of me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently worked with a group of caregivers for children with brain tumors and took them through a workshop, a course that I call Explore and Expand Your Caregiving Superpower. And it was so evident to me how important it is to give a lot of focus to the energy piece. Which I love because energy fascinates me. I have that knowing that everything is energy, and the way that we connect to it and nurture it is very important. And a lot of times when you don't do the kind of work that we do, that doesn't come to front of mind for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So to be able to just even introduce that topic and have them start looking and gaining some awarenesses around that and how it can serve them to move from depletion into more contentment and confidence with themselves is super fulfilling. I just love seeing those light bulbs go off. I was like, oh yeah, I can do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the building blocks, and that you say they're building blocks, but that people have to focus on one or the other type of thing. And I find too with caregivers, especially, they try to take on, their loved ones' pain and suffering. And so they're focusing on that and not their own mental health, so they can support the person. They try to take it all on themselves. Do you find that too?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Even for myself. I mean, people used to say to me when my daughter was inpatient or whatnot, oh, be sure to take care of yourself. And I literally wanted to throw something at them. Like, what does that mean? Like, I don't have time. Self-care, we normally think of mani-pedis or massages, or let's go do some meditation. I literally wanted to throw something at them because I didn't know how I could do that for myself in that moment when we're inpatient for 30 days. And so that's when I really started to think about it. And I'm like, you know what? The evolution of caregiver self-care is learning and building energy management skills.
Agree.
It really is.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you've given us so much information today. If you're able to just quick sum up the 4 steps for us, and then maybe give that one big tip for a patient and one big tip for a caregiver to get them started if they are really stuck right now, that would be fantastic.
Great. Yeah. So the 4 building blocks of resilience, I would say, is to become aware of all of these things. And then once we reach a benchmark for your resilience, so you're supporting yourself, that's when we can start building the prosilience. That's when we can start planning so that you're always ready to face whatever comes your way. So the 4 building blocks are: 1, calm yourself or self-regulation. 2 would be to choose a strategy with which you want to face the challenge. So do you want to reframe the challenge, take something that looks and feels like danger and find a way to look at it in a more positive or helpful way? Or can you change it? Can you change that challenge? Do something to make it something that you'd like it to be more. And then the last is accept what is and adjust and adapt. So that's kind of where I live a lot, is that, especially with illness, like, this is what's happening. This is reality. And I'm going to adapt in these ways. And some of those ways include the other building blocks. So using your resilience muscles or characteristics to help solve the problem. We all have these, and they're positivity, confidence, priorities, creativity, connection, structure, and experimenting. And then once you solve your problem using your resilience muscle, you want to make sure that you're tending to your energy so that you aren't depleted. And that's the managing energy piece, and taking a look at what's draining you in these certain areas, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, and how can you build some other habits into your life to help refuel yourself. And so those are the 4 building blocks that we can use when we're facing challenge, whether that challenge be, challenges are neutral. So whether that challenge be, hey, I really want to go out for this promotion. Okay. Or I was just diagnosed with an illness. So we can use this to support us across the board.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting. That's true. You could do that.
And then the last tip for patients and caregivers, I mean, truly, I think it's one and the same.
Okay.
Don't wait until things are all better to live better. Like, we have
Agreed.
this one life. This isn't a dress rehearsal. Don't just aim to be alive, like live.
Love that tip. I think it is fantastic and something that thankfully Barb and I learned early. So, in our lives, so it's easier to help my daughter through it. Right. So yeah, absolutely.
Something I think a lot of people don't know how to do. So I think that's an amazing tip. Well, thanks for everything today. If our audience wanted to learn more about you or connect with you, how can they find you?
Well, I'm several places. I would say the easiest way to really, quote unquote, get in the room with me and just figure out what you're going through and how I could support is just to schedule a chat. Like, I'm not going to sell you on anything. I want to get to know you. And this is really my soul's work. It's my mission. And I want people to be able to live even in challenging times. So my website is prosiliencecoach.com, PROSILIENCE coach.com. And if you're not quite ready for that, but you're intrigued by what I might be offering, I can be found on LinkedIn, Jenn Fredericks, Prosilience Coach. I can be found on Instagram, JFred, WI, because I'm in the great state of Wisconsin. And, and then I'm also on Facebook. So you know what? Follow me, see some of the things that I have to say, see if any of the things resonate, and then let's just talk.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for such a great conversation today. It was so interesting. We also want to remind our listeners of our Amplifying Your Wellness with TLC community. We're here for you and can help through a safe and welcoming community with free discussion groups, workshops, discounts on coaching, and so much more. You can find our link on our website as well. So we hope to see you there.
Thanks again, Jenn, for joining us and providing such awesome tips and information and for everything that you do.
Thank you.
We hope our audience that you were able to take away some great key points or some tips that can help you on your self-care journey. To learn more about all of our services, please visit us at twinlifecoaching.ca. Until next time, remember, you've got this.